Hi everybody, welcome to another race video. This is the Norwood Cycling Club Championships at Victoria Park in Adelaide. This race did not go anything to plan. As usual, I was planning to sit in and hope for a bunch sprint at the end, but what happens instead is quite different. Now, this is C grade. Normally on C grade, nothing gets away. As soon as the bunch sees that anyone's going up the road, particularly if there's more than one or two people, everyone just chases and it gets brought back within a lap or two. Today, however, there just seemed to be absolutely no impetus in the bunch to do any work, and a break got away and stayed away, as you'll see. It was a windy day. The wind was coming from the southwest, so from my back left shoulder on this view. And you can see just about here a few riders going up the road, and yeah, that's it. That's the winning move. We're on the first lap. The winning move went from the first lap. And I've said on a few of these videos that C grade, the only rule that you can rely on is nothing gets away. I thought that maybe because the wind, a group did get away, and that did turn out to be the case. Which made it a bit of an interesting race from a sprinter's perspective, because if the group's not chasing, I mean, we're still almost all together here, and the elastic snaps just as we're going around this bottom corner. 5 guys get up the road, and that's the end of the race. This is the Norwood Club Championships, and so I expected there to be a whole bunch of excitement, at least from the Norwood guys, and I can't actually see if there's any Norwood kit up the road. There weren't many Norwood riders here, at least not as many as I'd expected, given that it's the championships. But I'd been expecting them to do a lot of work, hoping that they'd try to bring it back together, but they didn't. So the pace has gone up a little bit. We're now 3 laps in, and you can see it actually is lined up a bit. So we're moving pretty quickly, but then around this corner people start to freewheel, and the pace seems to go out of the race. The group ahead is well around the corner. I think you can just see them around the corner now, so they'd be 15-20 seconds ahead, maybe. No one's really tried to go off the front yet, at least not off the front of the peloton, and I'm sitting far enough back that I'm not expected to do any work, maybe a little bit too far back so that when attacks do go, I'm going to be potentially missing them, so I decided to move up a little bit. This guy with the blue number on his back, he's sort of drifting backwards, and I decided to go around the wrong way because there was someone on my right, and looking at the rear camera he just stops pedaling and keeps drifting back, so that was probably a good call. And then at this point I'm only doing about 150 down to freewheeling, and I'm moving up closer to the front, which is where I want to be. So we're a lap further in, and other than sprinting out of the hairpin, which everyone does every single time, it's been pretty cruisy. And then here we go, we're about 5 or 6 wide, and what would Norcal Cycling tell you to do but go for an attack, and off he goes. I'm in an interesting position here. I don't want to bridge up to the front by myself, and I am of the firm belief that if you, as a solo, go for an attack to try to bridge up, then the whole peloton will attack with you, close you down, and then either speed up and chase down whatever it was, or just absorb you and then slow right back down again. So I don't have any confidence in doing an attack by myself. Yeah, you can see the A grade going past just here. But I'm also seeing solo riders going off the front and just being allowed to drift off. I mean, that guy went just before the A grade passed us, which is the perfect time to attack, because while we're being passed by A grade, we are technically neutralized. So even though he's now being passed by A grade as well, he can be going at his own pace, they'll still be blitzing past him, meanwhile we're forced to stay back. So it's a good way to get some clearance from the peloton. If you know the A grade's coming, go for an attack just before they catch up with the peloton. They'll be forced to neutralise, and you can get a bit of a gap by yourself. So anyway, we're not doing much, we're just cruising around. I mean, we're doing 30-40 k's an hour, I'm doing 200 watts into a headwind. It's really not a lot of work. And solo riders are going off the front, higgledy-piggledy. At this point, I'm beginning to wonder whether or not I'm going to have to do a bit of work myself. Tom Baxter here, I think, is probably a pretty good shot to win this, if it does come down to a bunch sprint. I think he's won it the last couple of years in this grade. He packs a pretty serious sprint, and in fact he won the Super Series Masters Cat 2 about 2 years ago. So I'm figuring he's a pretty good wheel to follow. I'm going to take some cues from him. I think you can see him just pointing up at how far ahead the break is at this point. So I'm going to follow him. Oh, nearly crashed there, and see what happens. So we're a bit later on in the race, 9 laps in. At this point there's been a few half-hearted efforts to chase down the same sort of 2 or 3 guys doing some half-hearted turns on the front. I've decided to come up to do a little bit of work. Again, I don't want to split this up yet. I want the peloton to work to chase it down. Moving up near the front to take my turn as the time comes, and Tommy Baxter decides to put in a dig. I'm perfectly positioned. I'm already waiting on the pedals. I get straight on him and we get a gap. And I'm torn. I don't know what to do here. I want to catch this break. On the other hand, I don't want to do all the work myself. And so while I'm willing to work a little bit on the front, I don't feel like doing big surges. Nevertheless, I come through, do a pretty half-hearted turn, I gotta say. I did 500 or 600 watts going up that little incline, but from the looks of it I'm shutting it right down to 250 watts again, so I'm not going to be busting things up, but I am more interested in just getting the peloton or even just getting a break working. Tommy Baxter coming through in second wheel, and I'm not sure who the guy on the front is. I'm doing 150 watts, so I don't think he's putting in a big effort either. And you can see in the rear camera that the group just catches straight up. Ooh, Thomas jumps across. So at this point I reckon my best bet is to try to encourage the peloton, so I go to do another effort on the front. I'm doing 500 watts, which is more than I can sustain for long, but it's not an enormous effort that's going to burn some matches. I mean, here I'm sitting at 400, 500 watts, which is what I'd be doing if I was in a breakaway. I flick my elbow, no one's there, no one comes through. I look around and I've got a gap. I don't want to go by myself. Fortunately, someone from ADX comes through. At this point, I've resigned to just sitting up and soft pedaling. He calls me through, gives me a yell. I get on his wheel. He brings someone from Norwood Cycling Club with him, and this is basically the rest of my race. So the 3 of us, he puts in a big turn to get this little chase group started. And that's enough for me and the Norwood guy to decide that we're willing to put in a bit of effort too and try to make this work. I swing wide, which is the smoother line through the corner. I come through. And after all my thoughts of just, letting this come back together, I think at this point I've decided, well, hey, look, got a couple of strong guys. Let's see if we can chase that group down. At the very least, it'll get the peloton a little bit excited. Although, as it turns out, they weren't in the slightest. Again, so the wind's coming from ahead of us to the right, so sitting quite a long way offset was the easiest place to be. I think these 2 guys were probably a little bit stronger than me overall, but we worked really well together as a group. I missed a few turns because I was properly cooked, but they weren't trying to drop me, I wasn't trying to drop them, and I came through for turns when I could. One issue we had is we didn't know how far up the front of the race was. We couldn't really see them. This isn't it here. And in actual fact, the guy from ADX, I don't think he knew that there was a group ahead. I think after 1 or 2 guys sort of shelled backwards from the front group, he thought that we might be the front of the race. And at one point, we actually got within about 20 metres of a group of 2 or 3 ahead of us. He didn't realise it. We didn't end up making that catch, and they just sailed off, and that was the end of our chances of catching the front. I didn't know. He was actually calling me out for having pulled through too hard. I thought it was worth doing some strong efforts to try to catch up with that front group. He didn't realise that there was a front group. In the end, we settled into a fairly good rhythm, and we rolled turns for the rest of the race. This is not the front group. I think this might be a shelled group of either A-graders or even possibly some of our group that's been shelled off the back. One nice thing about this group is they did work really steadily. They all pulled turns. Both of them pulled reasonably consistent turns. Neither of them went too hard, although the Norwood guy charged out of the hairpin up the hill every single time, which certainly put a bit of hurt into ADX ahead of me. But otherwise, yeah, we worked pretty well together. Okie dokie, so we've jumped in here, we've got 2 laps to go. Not really much has happened throughout the last 20 odd laps. We've worked really well together as a trio. Almost every single time the person on the front's pulled off on the windward side, so the 2 guys coming up have had a bit more of a shelter. Had a very, very close swap off just there. The closest I think we've been to the next group ahead of us has probably been 20 to 30 seconds. I don't think we actually got very close to making up with the next group. I had a chat with some of the guys afterwards. They reckon we got within 20 metres. I don't think we ever got that close. We've lapped probably about half of the peloton. They obviously got split up somehow. I'm not sure how, given how gently the peloton was rolling. But we've split off about half the peloton. We've lapped them. And we're coming into a lap and a half to go. I'm reasonably cooked. My heart rate's in the 180s, which is round about my top. If you want to go through and watch the whole video, the whole race, the link's in the description below. But basically all there is us swapping off turns with me skipping about once every 5 turns. I didn't have it. Coming up out of this corner, every single time the Norwood guy got up and sprinted out, so the last couple of times I've come in on his wheel, started pedalling pretty much as soon as I hit the corner and just rolled through rather than trying to keep up with him. But other than that, it's all been really smooth. So we've got 1 lap to go. We'll get the bell as we go past this time. I'm really struggling. I'm definitely cooked. But with only 3 people, I figure I can hopefully pull something out of the bag and at least maybe win this bunch sprint. It's been pretty friendly so far. They haven't been too pissed off with me missing turns, and when I've had turns I've pulled them as well as I can. Norwood does another turn on the front. This is his last turn. I get on the front. At this point, there's so far behind us that really what I should have done is absolutely nothing and just sat on all the way through. I wasn't thinking particularly clearly at this point, and I got on the front and did a reasonable turn. Now, I'm pulling 300 watts. That's a little bit above my threshold based on this power meter, but it's nothing that's going to burn matches, and it's really just tempo this close to the end of the race. Another A grade group goes past us, and this is where I make my probably biggest mistake. I'm soft-ish pedaling, but what I should have done is absolutely shut it down and got off the front. At this point, 250 watts is recovery, but we're so close to the end that it's really not. Every other race, I've always kicked myself for not going soon enough, so I decided to go really hard here and see if I can make a sprint last all the way through. Every time I kick up a gear, I sit down for half a second, which is both getting me up a gear but also recovering. But the mistake I make here is I click up too many gears, my cadence drops into the mid-80s, and I just never quite get on top of it again. I reckon I probably could have won this even though I was leading out, but I'm still only doing 96 RPM as we cross the finish line, and just didn't have enough. I think both of them got me on the line. So I hit power PRs for pretty much every single time from 16 minutes 30 all the way up to the end of the race at 37 minutes. So even though I didn't quite get the result, it shows that my training's working and I'm trending in the right direction. It was a training ride. I was expecting it to be a bit of a doddle with a sprint, and I was going to hop on the trainer afterwards, but I was well cooked by the end of this. I thought I got 6th, because I thought there was a group of 3 up the road, but it turns out there were 5 ahead of us, so I think I got 8th on the day. I'm not unhappy with that. Top 10's always pretty good, and I think given that I missed the very first break, that's about the best that could have been expected. My 2 breakaway companions, so the guy in the green directly ahead of me, he came second. He and the other, I think the guy in the Butterfields kit won it. he and the other guys two-manned it from basically a quarter of the way into the race through to the end. And then the group of three chasing them didn't catch on. We didn't catch the group of three chasing them. So good race, really hard. Some good work in the breakaway. Definitely a good training outcome. And I'm looking forward to the Super Series, which starts in about 3 weeks. So I'll see you at that one. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching.
Lap and a half. You started that. Thanks very much. First lap. So me later. 2 years ago. You got it? Who got second?